Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today with our special guest, Tamar Berkowitz. Tamar is a good friend that I've met when I was living in LA. We both moved to Florida a few years back with our families, and I'm super excited to talk with her today about the incredible work that she does for women and wellness and healing. I'd like to share her website with you where you can get more information. It's manifesthealth.com. And what Tamara does is trauma-informed somatic work. She's also an energy healer and a nervous system coach. And I'm really excited to have you here, Tamara. Thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
So, what prompted me to have you here today was I had recently attended one of your gatherings for women here in Florida at the House of More, which I'll tell the viewers what that is. It's basically a space that they have one in California and LA and one in Florida and Davie, where they showcase different practitioners for alternative types of healing, whether it's breath work or somatic experiencing or cacao ceremonies, meditation, all kinds of stuff. So it's a really incredible place, and I highly recommend that if you're local to one of those houses that you go check it out. And you know what stood out for me was I remembered the last time I had seen you in person in LA
Mhm.
that we were at one of these women's gatherings in somebody's house. And you and I were talking, and you seemed fine, but you didn't give across that you were actually in pain. And we had a quick chat, and you were telling me about how I think your back was hurt. I don't know, something was bothering you physically and you were in pain. And we started chatting a little bit about how you were looking for different ways to heal it and how you were really struggling. And then I hadn't seen you for like a really long time. And then I saw you at this incredible gathering where you were leading this big group of women and really helping them navigate a lot of ways of like tapping into their body and listening to their body. And we did all these incredible dancing exercises and vocal exercises where we were releasing a lot of energy. And I was just like, wow, like what an arc of transformation. I was like, I want to hear what happened there. Like, how did she go from there to here, to go from your own personal pain to being in a position where, thank God, you were able to transform yourself to be able to not only heal yourself, but also heal so many people.
Wow, thank you for that. First, I'm like crying just reflecting on that of the before and after. That always just brings me to tears because it's just miraculous and beautiful. And it's like the honor of my life to have experienced the healing I've experienced and to get to share it with people and teach people that you can heal from anything. So, what was happening was, I met you, the first time I met you was when I was pregnant with my first baby. Baruch Hashem, I now have four beautiful kids. And ever since becoming a mother, with each baby I had them all pretty back to back. I started developing autoimmune issues and chronic pain one by one. And with each child, it was getting worse and worse and worse. And I had no idea what was going on, but it got to the point that after my third child, I was severely debilitated, like around 5 days out of the week, sometimes 6 days a week. One of the things I developed was chronic vestibular migraines. So it's like literally as severe as migraines get, and like vomiting 24/7. Like it was insane. And endometriosis, which is, a horribly painful disease in the uterus. Eczema. I've always had eczema, but it was getting worse and coming out in different crazy ways. You know, for example, one time I got extremely painful blisters all over the palms of my hands, and I couldn't physically do anything with my hands for 2 weeks. Like it started getting worse and worse and worse. And I had gone to doctors for all these things, and they basically told me like this is autoimmune, like everything is a life sentence, and there's nothing you can do. You can take, pharmaceutical medications, which don't do anything, but like they kind of help with the pain management. And you can get like routine surgeries every now and then, and you could remove your uterus, and like you could, and I'm like, this is insane. No, thank you. I'm going to figure this out. I also just, I had seen different documentaries and like different things here and there about natural healing, and I knew intuitively that there was a way out of this. And after I had my third child, we were living in Miami already at that time, I had my rock bottom moment where all four of my different autoimmune issues were flared up fully at once. And I remember I was trying to give my kids a bath, and at that time also, like the eczema was flared up as severe as it could get, that like I was literally bleeding all over my body, and I couldn't not itch. It's like your body goes numb, but you have to, it's like, it's so intense. And I had to like sit on with my hands under my knees to just try and stop myself from itching. And I like literally fell to my knees in this prayer position. And that was like my rock bottom moment of like calling out to God. And I'm like, you create the cure before the disease. I will do anything to heal. I will change everything. Like my life isn't functioning anymore. I don't care about changing every facet of my life. I'll do it. And you, God, need to heal me because I'm going to die. Like there's no moving forward anymore. Um, and at that time also I had heard about different situations of people who had the migraine condition I had who had committed suicide, because it literally gets to that unlivable point. You're not living life anymore. And I was like, this is literally the direction this is going in. Um, and so I had that moment, and then and
Can I just interject here real quick?
sure,
Um,
yeah.
and so when you had that moment where you were reaching out to God, was that like in the moment, in the pain, while you're bathing the kids, you're having this moment? Or did you, after reflecting on that moment, step away and have like, a prayers thing? Like how did
It was with my two toddlers in the bath, and I'm on the floor next to, they're like playing, and they're like seeing that I'm like suffering, they're like whatever, and just like going back to playing. But I'm just there, like, I mean, also they were used to seeing me sick all the time, so it like wasn't anything so weird to them. So I was literally just on my knees like rocking and just like having this like quiet conversation with God. And one of the words I said to Hashem was like, God, you are my healer. And that was a very pivotal moment for me, because after, at some point later on in my healing journey, when I started learning about the energies of the Hebrew months, and I learned about the month of ER, that ER is an acronym for Ani Hashem Rafa'echa, I am God your healer, and my birthday is Rosh Chodesh ER.
Oh wow,
And
really?
yeah, and it was one of those moments, because at that point I was like healing a lot, and people were telling me all the time, you should be a health coach, you should be a health coach, because I
Yes.
was helping other people. And I was like, no, no, no. And then I learned that, and I was like, oh my God, is this my purpose?
Yeah.
And it was one of those really just pivotal moments. But anyways, so at that point, um, my husband started buying me all these books on nutrition and like all these different things. We started slowly changing our entire lifestyle throughout all the processed foods, throughout every chemical in my house, started eating only whole foods, no seed oils, like everything whole and pure, all anti-inflammatory, right? Because obviously I was full of inflammation everywhere with all the different diseases I had at that time.
Did you go vegan or plant-based?
No, very much about eating meat. Um,
But
and
isn't meat, and I'm sorry, I'm just asking because I also have an autoimmune condition and like a chronic pain thing on my foot. And I literally, well, I'll eat certain foods and I'll feel it in my foot. Like my foot will talk, and I noticed that it's usually with meat, and meat is inflammatory. So did you ever consider eliminating meat?
So meat is not necessarily inflammatory. Every single person has completely individual nutritional needs, and it also depends exactly where you're at, like where your starting point is from, right? So like, um, for some people, going vegan is what they need. And that could just be for a certain amount of time. And then you're able to start implementing other things, and then your body starts needing other things. Like this is a thing that's always constantly changing. Depends the state of your gut. It depends on the state of your liver and all these different things. This is all this stuff I started learning over time. So we also start like I changed all my cleaning products, beauty products, like everything to just completely non-toxic, and changed our whole lifestyle. And throughout the process, I fell in love with everything I was learning. Like I just was fascinated by the information. So I started studying every disease because I'm like, I just want to know. I'm like, I'm figuring out how to heal because I was also feeling my body healing suddenly, getting energy back. And other things I was doing at the time, which I didn't realize at the time because I didn't learn it yet, that is actually key to healing your body, is quantum biology, which is supporting your circadian rhythm with things like grounding in nature, getting raw sunlight in the morning, like absorbed into your retinas, absorbed into your skin without any sunscreen. Um, I was waking up at before the sun came up so I could have time to myself to meditate, to move my body, to exercise, to stretch. And mind you, when I started this, I could barely turn my head to the side, but I every day would just stretch and stretch and stretch, and I would get a little more flexible every day, every day, every day. And over time, I healed my body. I lost a ton of weight, which wasn't a goal of mine, but it was just a, natural byproduct of all the work I was doing. Um, had so much more energy, and I basically put all of my diseases into remission, right? And from there, I like Hashem was just like leading me to the next. I started learning mindset work, and from there, and implementing everything I'm learning. Like I'm very much like I learn, I implement. I
Well,
learn, I implement.
that's what I was gonna say, which is really incredible. Like I'm thinking to myself, wow, I've learned a lot of these things too, but I don't necessarily connect the dots between, okay, I know this is good for me. I know this is what I'm supposed to do to dot dot dot. Now I'm gonna do it. Now I'm gonna implement it.
Yeah,
So I think that that's really unique in what you're sharing is that you were learning all this material that was good for you, but you actually you took
right,
action. You weren't just like sitting on, you actually, which most of the times people go to, a nutritionist or a health coach or someone to help sort of hold their hand through the process to do it. But you were so self-motivated that you were able to actually apply all these things and see changes. So how long from when you first started learning all this stuff did you finally start to see like tangible results where you saw that these conditions you were dealing with were healing?
so it was a slow process, and I would say like literally every month, like I was like a little better and a little better, and I was seeing improvement and seeing improvement. And but like like a year after I started was when I was like good now. Like everything was in remission. I'm functioning again. I'm feeling great. More energy and vibrancy than I had even in my childhood. And I also will say that like Hashem really blessed me with certain challenges that allowed me to be in that position. Like he blessed me that I financially could not afford to work with a nutritionist. So I had to learn it myself. And it's very clear now that like my purpose was to become a healer and to do this for other people. So like I had to literally learn it in the way of like being a professional. Like I literally studied this stuff for years and implemented and helped other people and was supporting other people through their process. And I also used, herbs and supplements and homeopathy, like every natural thing I did. But I got to the point because I started going on the journey of like energetic stuff, like feminine and masculine energy, and like realizing I was very much in masculine energy my whole life, and I need to come into the feminine and like heal my heart. And throughout that journey, and also continuing to study neuroscience, which led me into like somatic stuff and learning how trauma gets stuck in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I got to the point that I was pregnant with my fourth child, because I was at that point super holistic, I wanted to have an unmedicated home birth.
Wow.
And I was training for that. Like I got to the point where I was like, I will never go to a hospital ever again, you
Yeah.
know? So because of that, though, I was thinking about the endometriosis, right? Because I was like, thank God, like I'm not affected by it right now, but it's just laying dormant. Because if I eat the wrong thing, I can trigger a flare up. If I make the wrong move, I can trigger a flare up. And I'm like, I learned so much at this point to know that there is a specific trauma that put this here. And if I heal that trauma, then I can heal this and like not have this anymore. And I also don't have to pass this on to my daughter. And then I also don't have to worry about the way it could potentially affect my childbirth.
So
And
how did you figure out what exactly was the root cause, the emotional root cause that contributed to that?
so at that point, I had learned a lot about emotional root cause. I was studying it, and it's very direct with where things manifest in the body.
Mhm.
And I was very good at I had a lot of childhood trauma. I was very good at facing them and dealing with them and healing them. But there was one specific trauma that I refused to touch, because I knew that it happened to me, but I didn't have a visual memory of it. I just had the body memory of it. And so my whole life, I thought I was like, got off like free, like I don't have to deal with this. But then I was like, this is what's causing the endometriosis, because I knew that I was sexually abused as a child at some point, but I didn't have the visual memory. I just knew because the first time I had a sexual experience, my body remembered that this was not the first time. And I was like, oh wow, something happened to me when I was younger. And I was like, whatever, I don't have to think about that. I don't remember. Great. Which is very, very common when it happens to children, that, our nervous system as a protection mode makes us dissociate. And so we don't have the memory of it at all. It's super, super common. So I was like, okay, I want to face this trauma, because now that I know too much about trauma, and I know I don't want to live with this anymore, and I don't want to risk flaring up endometriosis. I want this out of me. So I decided to embark on that journey of facing that trauma and allowing the memories to come up and go through the whole thing. And I started it by having an energy session with one of my dear friends who's a very, very gifted energy healer,
Healer?
energy reader.
Yeah.
And I have these gifts as well now. They were blocked by all my traumas before. Now that I've cleared so much, I've been able to access the same gifts. So now I really understand how it works. I can feel into people's energies, and sometimes I can visually see memories of their life.
Wow.
So that's what happened. She did that for me, and she was able to
In
tell
one
me
session? In one
in,
session?
in one session, she was able to see everything that happened, all the details, who it was, when it was, when I was 4 years old, and she told me everything. And it was wild, because hearing about it, like, it confirmed all my entire life, like all the different things that happened throughout my life, all the different issues I had that my parents were like, what is wrong with you? Like, I don't know how to deal with you. It was so clear, direct, this trauma. Um, and being triggered like throughout life from different things, directly triggering this trauma coming up. And it confirmed everything. It's
So
for me, it also,
but
yeah,
when
so.
but once she brought that up in one, I'm always blown away by these energy healers. I myself had a very powerful energy healer that I what do you call it? One second, that I worked with. And in one session, it was after I had gone through like a long fertility journey, getting pregnant with my daughter. And I was blown away how in one session, they could do so much. So how do you explain that, especially now that you do energy healing yourself, how is it possible that this trauma that's been sitting there for so long in the body is able to be released by another person, not by yourself, by the assistance of another person, and to be released so quickly? Like, what's the mechanism that makes that happen?
So it doesn't get released quickly. She was
Okay.
able to just feel and see what was there. No one can release trauma for you. Only you can do that yourself. So, like, even what I do and what any other healer does, if a healer tells you that they're healing you, run, go to somebody else. The healer is not healing you, they are guiding your journey. Everyone is their own self healer. Only you can take radical responsibility for yourself and for your health and for your life and for your trauma. And only you can work through these things and release them. And we need guidance on the process. We need someone to tell us what to do and how to do it and create safety for us to be able to do it. And we also need to do nervous system work, which is so key because a lot of times we don't have the nervous system capacity to feel the feelings of it, right? Like I went on a 2 year journey from start to finish of releasing this trauma that was piece by piece, little by little each time. And I had to go, through one chunk of just dealing with the emotions that I felt, going through the betrayal, right? It was a family member. Betrayal was the biggest thing for me. Betrayal, what was taken from me, like just so many different, the anger, the rage, like I had to go piece by piece. And then I started getting flashbacks. And then I had to go through each flashback. And mostly when people get flashbacks, a lot of times they just dissociate, right? Or when you're in that situation of like it being triggered, say when you're, being intimate and it gets triggered, you just dissociate. But at that point, I had done enough nervous system work to be able to sit in the trigger and with the knowledge that I had about somatic healing to just allow myself to be with it and be in the memory and let my body tantrum and freak out and be 4 years old again and let myself go through what I needed to go through in the moment as opposed to being frozen in the moment, which is what happened, right? I had the nervous system capacity at that point to allow myself to do that. And that's what released my trauma to the point that I ended up getting to the point exactly 2 years later to the day of when I had this first original session of regaining my freedom, my true peace, like peace, acceptance, and like there's not even anger anymore. I got to the point of real peace and real acceptance of the entire thing. And, like I used to want to like kill this person and want him to die and like all these horrible things. And now I'm just like, I'm good. It
Let,
doesn't
let me
affect
let
me
me ask you
anymore.
that because
Thank God.
that's super powerful.
Hmm.
What you just described is super powerful. I know people that have had different types of childhood traumas that they still carry, and they've been to like, you know, they've been to years and years of therapy and psychedelics and antidepressant, like so many things,
Hmm.
and haven't been able to release all of that
Yeah.
trauma. So when you were doing that work for 2 years, again, was that again self-guided, or were you working with someone to help you? Because it sounds like you touched on the somatic stuff, the nervous system stuff, like a lot of these different things that you used as your resources to help you go through that process.
Yeah.
But was that again just you doing it on your own, or did you have, besides the original energy healer who opened that up for you, did you
Hmm.
have any outside guides that helped you with that, or was that just you on your own?
It was both. I had outside guides. I also was already in my professional training of becoming a facilitator of the somatic reparenting method. So I had my mentor who was like the best of the best, literally going through her program because part of being trained as a facilitator, the first like 3 months is just straight your own personal healing so that we get to fully experience
Yeah.
it. So I had that, and I had the context as a professional of exactly what I needed to do when things would come up. Thank God also I had amazing support from my husband. So I'm able to tell him exactly what I need from him in those moments so that he's able to support me in those moments. But I'll tell you also that the difference, because I help people heal from these things now, and the difference that I see because it for some people it's like they're like I've been doing this for 10 years and like I'm not going anywhere or I'm still very much in it. The difference is that nervous system work is key. And the reason is because, as I mentioned before, we need to expand our capacity to be able to hold and sit with these emotions. Like when I think about it, it's wild what I was able to do to be able to sit in a flashback and like the physical memory of literally reliving the experience and being able to let go and just be there and not fight it and just let my body shake and jump and kick and scream and like do all the things that needed to be done because that's what it takes to release, right? So I had to do the nervous system work to expand my capacity to be able to hold that. So my body doesn't see this as a threat and go straight into survival, fight, flight to protect me from it. Right. And the thing with psychedelics, I like psychedelics are an amazing, beautiful medicine, but there's a big problem with the way it's presented. It's not presented properly, that people think like they can do psychedelics and then they can just have this amazing healing thing. And no, because if you haven't done, first of all, when you're taking psychedelics, it's opening up your subconscious mind to like everything that's there, right? Like you're dealing with so much at once. And if you don't have the capacity in your nervous system to hold what's there and deal with it and then properly integrate, then that one psychedelic experience, what maybe it was amazing while you were in the experience, but then after nothing really happened, it's because your nervous system was not prepared to be able to deal with it. And I don't believe that psychedelics are for everyone, and definitely not if you have done um, prerequisite nervous system work to be able to
Yeah.
hold what is going to come up. And that's also why a lot of people have what we refer to as bad trips, because so much trauma is coming up. It's not like the psychedelics didn't work and they messed you up. It's you weren't prepared for that and you were not prepared to hold the pain that comes up.
For sure. I love how you explained that. That was really incredible the way you've been able to process it. So it sounds like as you were going through your own personal healing process, you were also getting the support through the program that you had already tapped into, that was like helping you not only heal yourself, but also to train you to help others. So you mentioned a bunch of times you talked about nervous system work. Was that
Mhm.
part of, I think it's called the, what do you call the reparenting?
The somatic reparenting method.
Right. So can you talk about what is the somatic reparenting method and what specifically is the nervous system work that you did that helped you, but you also do with others? And did you learn the nervous system stuff as part of that program?
Yes.
Okay.
So I learned the nervous system stuff as part of the program. It's like because you have to have that knowledge in order to facilitate the somatic reparenting method itself. It's not like an active, you're not actively teaching nervous system stuff as part of it. You're guiding the client through a journey, which I'll explain in a moment. But because of my background of learning that nervous system stuff and how vital it was, and how she took us, Dr. Summer Nicole is my mentor who created the method, because she took us through that journey of healing our nervous systems. I also just made this another thing that I teach people because I'm like, this is so key, like groundwork that needs to be done. And so I also provide nervous system coaching, and I plan on creating a lot of different programs around that for people because it's just vital. Everybody needs it. Um,
For sure.
Even if you don't have intense trauma, like just day-to-day stuff, you need to know how to regulate your nervous system. So
Exactly. Well, that's what I was going to say is that a lot of our conversation is about trauma-based stuff, but I also
mhm,
think it's important for the people that are listening to keep in mind that a lot of this stuff can be applied to people who don't necessarily have
correct.
trauma, like just day-to-day life can be so
Yes.
tense, and the whole nervous system regulation is something that we get bits and pieces of it here and there, like you should go for a run, you should meditate, you should move your body, get some fresh air. Like basically, I always think of nervous system regulation as like relax. Like just give your I mean, I know it's more than that, it's deeper, but
Yeah.
basically it's that the body the body's response to too much coming at you, and that you sort of need to create the space for it to just like sort of calibrate to what's happening. I'm super fascinated by nervous system stuff, and I would love to attend any of the workshops you do on that, because that's something that I think, especially with motherhood, is
Mhm.
super.
Oh my gosh, yes. Especially for moms, right? And the thing is that I'll give you just like the quick, like nutshell spiel of the nervous system, right? Because as we both mentioned, like you don't have to have intense trauma, like everyone needs it, because what the nervous system is, first of all, it controls all of the automatic functioning of our bodies. So our respiratory rate, our heart rate, our digestion, every automatic functioning of our bodies, that's why it's called the autonomic nervous system, is controlled by the nervous system. And so its job is to detect threats and then communicate to us, do we move away from the threat or towards the threat, either going into our survival modes for protection. So either fight or flight, or freeze or fawn. Fawn is the people pleasing tendency. That's literally a nervous system reaction. And just like all the automatic functioning of our bodies, these reactions are autonomic. They're automatic. We think that like a lot of people think like, I'm stuck in overwhelm or anxiety, or I react or I shut down, and what's wrong with me and why can't I control it? You can't control it. Your body is detecting something as a threat and it's going into survival. And so the problem is that our body detects things, our brain detects things that aren't threats as threats, putting us into survival mode. So my kid's not listening to me and driving me crazy and me being overstimulated. Your nervous system is like, threat, go into survival mode. And intellectually, you're like, kids are just being kids, but you're not able to control your response. So part of the nervous system healing, it's like literally training your nervous system to learn what is a threat versus what is not. So that's how it works, and that's why we get stuck in these different reactions. And the problem is when we keep going there, like if we have anxiety, for example, and it goes unchecked for years and years, it becomes chronic, and then we don't even know the difference between like normal life versus not having this. And then
I totally can
yeah.
relate to that. I think can you give us a couple of examples of what are some like practical nervous system regulation things that people could apply today? Like if someone is feeling anxious or stressed out, what are some practical, just like little takeaways that someone can do right now that could help them to get into that parasympathetic space of the body, and just because it sounds like there's a lot to learn here, but
Oh yeah.
I always want to be able to provide people with something that they can take away now, that they can do, that they can apply on a daily basis to help them get to that calm space, you know?
Absolutely. So first of all, just know that like the long-term, like actual healing, regulating the nervous system, it's a long-term game and it's a slow process, because it actually, part of the process is slowing down. And the nervous system functions through our senses. It detects threats through the senses. So we have to communicate to it through our senses. So somatic practices, which is using your body, using specific movements, using your voice, releasing noises. These are all the somatic practices that help to regulate the system. So like, this is like the little things we can do every day to just help get ourselves into regulation. For women especially, I highly recommend a sensual movement practice. And for a lot of women, that sounds intimidating and scary because they're like, oh, sensual movement, like I have to get all sexy. And like, no, a sensual means senses, and it happens to be sexy because you're a beautiful woman. Okay, sorry to break it to you, but it's that's just what it is. But it's slow, it's engaging the senses and it's going super slow, right? Because you think about it, when we're in survival mode, the nervous system is in a state of hypervigilance, and you're like always on alert, like looking for the next threat. So, how do we get ourselves out of this? By slowing down and slow breathing, slow inhales, even slower exhales, slowly like touching yourself all over your body. If you're just listening to this, you don't see, but I'm like there with my hand, just slowly touching my arm, running it up and down my arm. And you want to do this over your whole body, slowly just touching yourself everywhere while you're deep, slow breathing every single part of your body and being so in tune with just the sensations. And when you become aware of sensations that are coming up in your body, because when you allow yourself to slow down, the uncomfortable things are going to come up. And we get uncomfortable. We don't want to hear these things. This is why we're always distracting ourselves to try to not hear it and to try to numb it. So you have to give yourself the permission to just witness what is there without judging it, right? Like you may feel like your heart's beating fast and you're just like, oh no, I'm feeling anxiety, I'm feeling fear, or whatever it is. Just name it. Like, okay, there's fear here. I see you, fear, and I'm holding you with love, and I'm listening to you, and I'm not judging you, and there's nothing wrong with me for feeling this, and I'm going to just give you that love. You can hug yourself. One of the really cool things about the nervous system is that it does not know the difference between what's real or imagined, right? Like if you think in your mind of this crazy hypothetical situation, something scary happening, your heart starts racing, you start crying, all these things start happening, and it's not even actually happening because the nervous system doesn't know the difference between it being real or imagined. So you're activating that's a very real reaction. So too, hug yourself. Let your brain receive those reward centers going off of being hugged and being loved, high-fiving yourself, like being proud of yourself. Your brain, your reward centers are literally going off. Kiss
That's
yourself.
funny. Kiss
You
yourself.
know, like
That's so
seriously,
funny.
hug yourself, give yourself that love, hold yourself, rub your body, give it that love. And it can be very scary for some people because then it brings up the
Yeah.
fact that they're like, oh, actually, I hate myself. And
Self-love. Yeah.
yeah, and okay, so great. Now we know that, right? You take away the judgment. Now we know that. Now we know where we're starting from. And now we start the practice. You'll only get there by just starting the practice. And I always tell people, like, you're never going to beat yourself into healing. You're not going to yell at yourself into healing. You can only love yourself into healing. And it takes allowing yourself to love those negative parts of yourself that you don't love,
Hmm.
right?
You will,
And giving love to those parts.
I love that. As you were talking about the slow movements and how we could use like somatic practices through our voice and through our body, it made me think also with our children how they look to us to
Mm,
help them regulate their nervous system, right? Like that we need to be role models for them to show them how to do that. Like I know, for example, when my kids get into a space where they're like overtired, overstimulated, or just had a long day, I'll put on some music and we'll just do like a little dance party, like something to get them moving and out of the mindset of whatever they're thinking about and just get into their body, start singing, start moving, Um,
exactly.
and I think that it could be that
Yeah.
easy, you know? But I do like what you're saying about how this is like a practice. This is like it's basically like a way of life and really tuning into our body. You just reminded me of something. So, oh, this is so funny. So last week I took my son to gymnastics and it was a bunch of us moms watching our kids do gymnastics. And I was speaking with one of the moms there and she was talking to me about you. Like just out of nowhere, she was telling me how she's been working on herself and this is her year where this is the year of me. She said this is the year of
Mm.
me. And she was saying how she's attended a few of your gatherings and how really opened her up. Like she was talking about cacao ceremonies, and I was like, so you guys basically sit around and drink hot cocoa? She's like, no, it's about opening up our heart. And and the key thing that I took, like she said a lot, like you definitely have had a major impact on this person. I'll tell you her name later, but it was so touching because I knew I was going to be meeting with you. I was like, I have to remember to tell Tamar about this person,
Oh.
you know? And so the key thing that she told me that she learned from you was that she learned how to connect back into her body, that
Mm.
she learned how to listen to her body, listen to her feelings, learn to use that as a guide. Like she had just decided to pull out her kids from school and homeschool,
Wow.
and that she has 4 kids that she's homeschooling. And she said that she made that decision because she listened to her body. Her body gave her a signal that she wasn't feeling well. And she realized that the signal was, she literally was nauseous for like days. And she realized when she got quiet and she listened to her body, she realized that was coming from her feeling really not okay with where her kids were in school. She was not happy with what was going on there. And when she tuned into her body and she asked Hashem to understand why is she feeling this way, she realized that that feeling was her body saying, take your kids out of that school and come up with a new way of educating your children.
Wow.
I wanted to share that with you because I got chills when she told me that story because I was like, wow, that's a really big decision to get as a, so I feel like it's what you're sharing is not just like practical lifestyle choices of ways for us to regulate our nervous system, but it's really about tuning in to the body as a way to communicate with our neshama in a way, right?
Yeah,
And like
exactly.
right? Like our neshama is talking to us through the body and telling us this is not right, or this feels good, this doesn't feel good, this pay attention to this, don't pay. So that's the part that I find really exciting about this whole somatic stuff is that instead of us thinking that the spirit and the soul consciousness is something that's outside of us or separate from
Hmm.
us, but it's really completely a part of who we are, and that our body is just as holy as our soul, and that our body has as much to say as our soul does, right? um
Yes.
so I just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, thank you. I want to speak to what you are saying,
Yeah.
and also just Baruch Hashem, like what an honor to have this effect on people. And again, like thinking back to where I once was to like being able to help people with that, like it blows my mind. But what you were just saying, how like the soul is a part of who we are. Like it's not even a part of who we are. It is who we are. That is us. Like the soul activates the body, right? And the reason why we get stuck and we're in survival and having all these different negative experiences in life, we're just like, it's like, imagine like you're born, you're perfect as a baby, like a fresh baby. You're perfect. I mean, some babies are born with trauma because we also can receive trauma from our mothers in the womb, and that's generational. And I've gone through all those kinds of healing myself and helping other people healing that as well. Um, but it's like imagine like you're like this perfect pure being, and then all the trauma, and by the way, trauma also includes little t trauma. It could be the boy who was mean to you in second grade, and when you were publicly embarrassed. Like it could be these little things. All these things are like adding piles and piles of things that are covering up your soul and just piling up this crap on top of you, and you're just carrying this load of stuff that you're not able to access your soul, who is who you truly are. That is your essence that speaks to you, but we can't hear it because we're too busy carrying this load and just trying to survive. So it's like this process of healing, this and somatic healing, and which is sustainable, real healing. It's not like going to talk therapy and like you're just talking things out and intellectualizing things, and it helps you function, but you don't actually really go anywhere. You're still living with all these things. It doesn't sustainably heal and remove these things out of your system. So healing is not becoming this like other, better, higher version of yourself. It's going back home to who you truly are. And it is the process of unburdening, of taking off one at a time, all this stuff that was piled onto you one at a time until, and by the way, like that's also why physically, I mean, there's other scientific reasons why also, but physically, when we do this healing, your posture literally gets better. You get physically lighter, you're more energy. Like it's literally as if you're physically holding all this stuff. It comes off of you, and you're able to then connect back to your essence and hear your soul's voice, hear who you truly are. And there's also like a lot of subconscious reprogramming that we have to go through so that we even allow ourselves to honor what our boundaries are and what we actually want out of life when society and our parents and our caregivers tell us all these things and expect all these different things from us, and we're disappointing them and we're scared to do that. And we just want to like fit the status quo, but our soul is like telling us no, right? Like, for example, this woman heard the voice that's like she needs to homeschool her kids and that's what's right for her. And it's like the amount of like work it takes to just allow yourself to listen to that voice, and then being like, I don't care what you think, parents, or what you think, society, like this is what's right for me because this is what my soul is telling me. And then I do it and it feels great and it's working great for everybody, and our life is changing and so much more vibrant and happy and alive, like that's what the
100%.
process of healing really is. It's coming back home to our true selves, which is a lot like who you were as a child before all the pain happened. And that's also a beautiful thing, is like you get to be light and childlike and silly and goofy. And like that's my favorite part of healing, is coming back to that part of myself of just
Well,
being light and goofy.
it's so funny you said that because that was one of the things that she said was that one of the reasons she wants to homeschool is because she wants to tap into her inner child, and she feels by giving her kids the type of education and childhood that she didn't have, it's sort of like her way of repairing the inner child that that she didn't get to have that experience. So
Totally.
beautiful. Like it's really this whole thing is just so incredible. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that you write in your socials, like a lot of your intentions and the work that you do has sort of like a global consciousness behind it too. Like you talk about Mashiach and how when one has a personal redemption and personal healing, they're really contributing to the global redemption, the global healing. So I want to hear you talk a little bit more about that because that's like one of my favorite topics.
Yes, my favorite topic as well. Yeah, so truly my number one intention in all of this is to bring Mashiach. And the way that works is everything is energy, right? Like, and a lot of us know this, but we don't really understand what that means. And there's a lot of stuff that, like a lot of scientific stuff that goes into explaining this. But to give you like the nutshell thing around it, like everything is energy. Um, and we exist on a certain frequency, right? Which is the measure of energy. Like it's like a
The
number.
vibration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The vibration. And so like if you're here on this frequency, only what is on this frequency can reach you.
Right.
And so like we're trying to get to the frequency of Mashiach, and that's like up here. So that's why like I heard this concept when I was 18 years old in seminary. One of the rabbis was like, there are people right now living in Mashiach times, living in Mashiach consciousness. And at that age, I was like, I don't know what that means, but I want that. What like that's my goal in life, whatever that means. And thank God I, throughout my journey, was able to understand it. So it's like we need to raise our vibration to get to that frequency, right? And so you can ask yourself, like, what is that frequency? Like, what is life when Mashiach comes? First of all, Mashiach is redemption. And if you have ever healed a trauma in your life, or even just, got to that point where you're able to like honor your boundaries and honor yourself and and break through like a people pleasing thing. Like that is redemption. It is freedom. And you experience that like viscerally. You like if you've experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. So it literally is the experience of redemption. And so, like Mashiach is the global redemption. So and we also know that we'll all be healed and there won't be any sickness and there won't be any suffering. So when there's individual redemptions happening all over the place, eventually that adds up and equals to one big collective redemption. And the whole time we are raising the vibration because energy is pumped out. Like your energy is pumped out. That's why you walk into a room and like you feel the energy of the room. You feel the energy of another person, whether you're aware of it or not, how like your mood just changes by being around someone depending on what their mood is. Like that's what's happening, right? So, so we have the ability to, when we go through our own redemptions, it goes out to everybody else. And so,
I love
and
that. I
yeah,
think also that one sec. I think also that in Hasidus, there's always this concept of we want Mashiach now, as if like Mashiach is something external to us.
mm,
There's a concept of Mashiach as a person, but then there's also a concept of Mashiach as a consciousness, right? And that
yes,
we're by us raising our consciousness, we're getting closer to that. And we're all, like you said, it's a collective contribution to the Mashiach consciousness. It's like a global mass, like a critical mass of consciousness, right? Like when you think about people that lived like 100 years ago and people that live now, like the way that consciousness has developed and continues to develop so quickly. And what I love about your work is that it's very personal, but it also taps into the intention of like, how do I direct my energy? Like this is, I'm helping people, but I also want to help the universe, the world at large. And I think that that's like such a beautiful thing.
thank
Um,
you.
I also want to, another one of my favorite subjects is the concept of the rise of the feminine. I know that most of the work that you do is wellness-based practices for women. Um,
Mhm.
I've seen here and there that you do some for both men and women, but mainly your work is targeting helping women. And
Yes,
so a little bit earlier, you mentioned how you needed to make a shift from the way that you approached your life from like a masculine perspective and how you wanted to shift that more towards a feminine. So I want to hear a little bit more about what that meant to you in your life and how you were able to do that.
for sure. First, I just want to like continue a little piece about the Mashiach thing,
Yeah,
which is
sure. Go
the
ahead.
perfect segue into this because it's also directly about feminine healing. That one of the things, like as I was saying, like we can ask ourselves, like what is the frequency of Mashiach? So like how can I make that my reality now? So in my women's circles, we talk about that and we talk about how like real true sisterhood and what that looks like, right? And I talk about all the time, like the different wounding we have as women from other women, right? Like throughout our lives, I know every single woman experiences this, right? Lots of wounding from the feminine, whether it's jealousy or backstabbing or judging or all these things, right? And like if we are in the frequency of Mashiach, then what are we doing? We're here as a sisterhood. We're holding space for each other. We're holding each other in our deepest pains. We are not judging each other. We are also celebrating each other's wins and greatest joys, and we are not jealous of each other. And I have a rule in my circles that you must come with an attitude of approval. It is the number one most important rule, right? Because we all come from different walks of life. And especially like within Judaism, it's like such a joke that like different, communities like judge each other and like what you're doing, what you're not doing. Like we are 12 tribes. We are all different. And that's what makes us so beautiful. And even when Mashiach comes, we're still going to be on different levels. Like that's a thing. We are not equal to each other. We are all different and we need to celebrate those differences and love each other for them. And so when you see someone that is so different from you and maybe saying something that you would normally judge and think is so wild or out there or bad or whatever, in this moment, I'm just viewing you as a beautiful soul with full approval of you. And like that is what is going to bring Mashiach and heal the feminine within feminine relationships. And so I always encourage women because we practice this in our circles. So I'm like, now take this out. Practice this in your own life. Catch yourself when you're feeling jealous or judgmental or whatever it is towards the feminine, you know, and that's how we need to be treating each other. And we need to really step into this era of sisterhood. Like Mashiach comes in the merit of the righteous women. What are we doing to become the righteous women and bring Mashiach? That's literally our job. It is our responsibility. It is our mission,
Yeah.
right? And the Rebbe even said, like, the world is ready. Like the world itself physically is ready to hold Mashiach. And now it is up to the people. We have to get on this consciousness. So ask yourself, what is Mashiach consciousness? And start practicing to get yourself there.
Hmm.
So that's what I want to say about that. And then regarding like the feminine energy. So, you know, as a result of my own trauma, I also had a lot of other childhood traumas. I had a very, you know, verbally, emotionally abusive father, and that was like a whole crazy saga of my life. Like, so, right, as a defense mechanism, as a protection for myself, I had to become very much in my masculine energy because I wasn't getting protection from the masculine, right? I didn't have a masculine figure in my life. And I actually became a very, very um, tough person on the outside, that like don't mess with me, you cannot mess with me. And I had no problem like standing up for myself and standing my ground and like being very strong. And but it was like to this point of toxicity. And the thing is that the way energies work, especially with masculine and feminine, there's always a balance. There has to be a balance, right? So like even within your own relationship, within your own marriage, let's say, like if the woman is holding too much masculine energy because the feminine frequency goes first, right? Which is why Mashiach is coming in the merit of the righteous women. It is the feminine frequency that goes first. So if you're holding too much masculine energy, it doesn't allow your husband to be in his masculine. And so part of our healing, even for them, like we want to pinpoint what they're doing wrong and they're not stepping up, but like, have you looked at the way you're holding your own energy? Are you allowing yourself, even though right now it doesn't feel safe to be in your feminine because he's not holding enough masculine, but it's up to you to soften that masculine to allow him to come into his. And by the way, when people really practice that properly, it happens automatically, miraculously. It's like the craziest thing. Other husbands suddenly just step up. Like it happens all the time. It's literally just how it works. It's so cool. But anyways, I recognized that about myself, that I was just too much in my masculine protection, right? And that I had to soften into my feminine. So what does that mean, right? The masculine is the strong container. Like you can imagine just like a cup, right? The masculine is like the cup and the feminine is the water. The feminine flows, the feminine is fluid. And that's why like, you know, people can think of like women that were so emotional and were so all over the place. And like, I wish I could just like, you know, be normal and and not be all over the place. But that's actually the magic and the beauty of women. And it's literally the way Hashem created our natural cycles every single month. Like men function on a circadian rhythm and we function on an infraradian rhythm. That it's like their rhythm is reset every 24 hours and we are week by week we're changing, we're in a totally different stage, we are, and each week you're gonna, one week you're gonna be so full of energy and doing things, another week you're gonna need to rest and be down, and another week you're gonna be super emotional and you know, and fragile, and then another week you're gonna be super strong. Like that's just how we function. And when we learn like the way Hashem created us to function and we can live in cycle with our natural, or in rhythm with our natural cycles, then we're able to so much better flow into the feminine and just be fluid and not be so structured, because we are not meant to hold the structure. And honestly, it's really cool. I learned this from my business coach that, you know, we all have masculine and feminine energy. And the idea is not to be so feminine, it has to be balanced. And so, you know, she was explaining as an entrepreneur, which I am also, so like this is huge for me, that like when you're running a business, you do have to have a certain amount of structure, because if you're too fluid and feminine, how are you going to run a business? Like there's so much structure that has to go into it. And so the idea is that you can create that balance that you are creating such a solid masculine container for yourself that it allows your own feminine energy to just flow for yourself. So that's like the ultimate goal, which is,
Yeah. The
it takes
balance
a lot of practice to get there.
The balance of both. What I think also I love what you just said about all of that, about how the masculine feminine dynamics come out in male female relationships, and also how it's part of our like psychological makeup. I also like to explore like the concept of how the rise of the feminine is intricately connected to the rise of Mashiach consciousness, because
Mhm.
how it's there's so many things. That's like a whole topic we could talk about for hours, but that we see a shift in sort of like on a global level of like feminine qualities becoming more apparent, more pervasive, more compassion and humanity, more kindness, like even like what we were talking about earlier about food. You can see in the way that we eat food now how it's becoming more plant-based and more like there's so much more consciousness behind everything, you know. I also want to talk a little because I know we're about to wrap it up soon. So we talked about a lot of things. I just want to review some of the things that we talked about because you do a lot and they're all like interconnected. So we talked about nervous system regulation. We talked about the reparenting method that you learned for somatic experiencing, which people can get a taste of that in the gatherings that you have, and also with the one-on-one work, the cacao ceremonies, the ecstatic dance, the breath work. I want you to talk a little bit about the body work because I saw some videos of that on your socials of how you do body work. And you said earlier that, one of the major things that happened to you was you had an energy healer help you open up a major trauma, and that later on it opened up in you your energetic healing gifts. So I want to hear more like about that and how from this whole process you got to that, and what the energy healing aspect of your work is like, and how you approach it.
So the first of all, I believe that every single person is capable of energy healing. And like even if you don't viscerally feel energy like I do, and I've had that since I'm a child, I could always feel stuff and I just didn't understand what it was as a kid. But even if you don't feel stuff, you can still learn different energy healing techniques and still apply them, and it still works because energy is energy and it just works. It's beautiful. Such a powerful medicine. But yeah, so like I had these gifts always as a child and was just unaware. Like as a kid, my only reference was scary movies. So I would feel things and I'd be terrified, right? And I remember also even just like moving my hands like through the air, I could feel things that, you don't see. And I would, as a kid, I'm like, that's weird. And I thought it was like weird, or other people would think that was weird. So I just didn't talk about it. Um, and so part of the somatic reparenting method training is she trained us in Reiki. So I became a Reiki master through that. I mean, she actually only taught us Reiki 1 and 2, but because I naturally had these abilities, I naturally became a Reiki master. And I like told her about things I was doing in session. She's like, yeah, you basically just skipped right to master. And I was like, oh, wow, that's wild. Thank God. But basically it was just very intuitive for me, and it actually happened. I was in a women's group psychedelic healing ceremony, which was the first one that I did. I've only done 3 total, and like very spread out. Like I said, I'm not about like doing a lot, and I'm only about doing it when you're ready for it and all of that stuff. But the first time I did it, on that journey, this is when my gifts like really opened up for me. I was just like drawn to a woman there who ended up, we actually grew up together and like we're never friends, and now we're best friends.
Yeah.
But I was just drawn to her, and I felt like I always ask people for consent before doing any work on them. I would never just tap into their energy field, but like her energy was communicating to me, and it was like asking me, like begging me to come. And I just started, and I told her, I was like, normally I would ask for consent, but your body already gave me permission. She's like, yes. And she's just like laying there and receiving it. I'm like literally just pulling things out of her. And she's having these wild body reactions of like shaking and noises and like having the full like convulsions and all these things. And I ended up taking out, like she told me later, I took out like all of this female ancestral trauma stuff that was totally ancestral. And like she always had this like pressure in her leg that she wasn't aware of because it was normal to her, right? Until it was removed. And ever since then, like it's been gone. And like all this intense like pressure and pain she used to just naturally feel in her leg is totally cleared.
Wow.
Um, and there was another woman on that journey who also, she had like a lump on her shoulder, and I would just naturally started doing work on it and literally reduced the lump by 70%. Like, and
Wow.
I was like, it was just totally intuitive. And I was like, okay, maybe that was just the mushrooms, but like, that's just what I've been able to do ever since. It just opened up my gifts.
That's
And,
amazing.
as I mentioned, like when we have just like traumas, it's these energetic blockages in our system. So the more we clear, the more our own life force energy is able to flow through us, and we're able to access these gifts if we have them, which again, I really believe everybody has them. I don't think I'm special. Like I
Well,
really don't.
I definitely think you're special.
Thank you.
Definitely tapped into something, and I think that's actually one of the benefits of doing these sort of like psychedelics is it does have a way of energetically opening people up to
Yeah,
you know um as you were talking I was thinking wow, like imagine kids were taught how to do energy healing because I think kids are intuitively like
they can be.
right, they a
And I
lot.
know someone who does it.
Really? Oh, I'd be
Yes.
interested because I feel like they're definitely tuned into things and they don't know necessarily how to process them. Like as you were talking about your childhood, how awesome would it be that we could give kids the language to be able to tap into understanding what they're experiencing and instead of feeling like, oh, like nervous or like scared or not knowing what to do with it, to really hone their gifts from a young age, right?
Yeah, and I
Um,
see that in my own children. Two of my children, I mean, the other ones are still much younger, but one of my kids is like full on psychic. And it's been like the greatest gift of my life that like he tells me the things he's seeing and experiencing, and I'm able to guide him and be like, instead of being like, that's not real, I'm like, oh, well, this is what you do. This is how you protect yourself from negative energies, and don't allow these, like I'm helping him learn how to like, because it's very it can be a really slippery slope of like, because negative energies and negative entities disguise themselves as things that are there to help you, so you have to be able to discern and to understand how to protect your own energy and not welcome those things in, and only
yeah.
welcome in the things that are Hashem designed for your own highest good. So I'm able to teach him how to do that so he is fully protected. And then my other child, she's just like a natural energy healer. And I mean, she's seen me do sessions, and I do sessions on my kids, and she just sits there sometimes and she's just like doing stuff with her hands. And you're like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I just feel negative energy. I'm just putting it all into a ball and I'm putting it into the wall over there and just getting rid of it. And
I
it's like,
love
it's
that.
so epic.
I love that. That's amazing. You know
Thank
what
God.
you brought up something that I was gonna ask you next and then we'll wrap it up, which is
Sure.
um yeah, like the whole idea of when you're working with so many people that carry all this negativity, whether it's trauma or spiritual energies or there's a lot. Like the spiritual world is full of both positive and negative, right?
Yes.
So in your training and in your experience, what do you do like when you're doing Reiki or whatever, like what do you do when you're working with people in general to protect yourself from absorbing that negativity and like creating the boundary of protection around yourself so that it doesn't penetrate, you know?
So it's been a very long-term learning curve for me. I used to be very badly affected by it in the beginning because also if you're an empath, which everyone who gets into this work is an empath, you are open. You're just naturally open to stuff. And if you have trauma, then you have injuries in your aura, in your auric field, which allow things to just slip right through and also allows your own energy to slip out. And you can get depleted and accidentally, instead of giving them like divine healing energy, you're accidentally leaking out your own good energy. And then you're left totally depleted. So there's definitely, first of all, a process of learning about your own energetic auric field and how to heal energetically. There's different layers. There's like a lot of stuff to this, which is also stuff I'm creating a course around that I'm going to teach people because, again, so key and so important for everybody to learn. But there's a lot of things you can do. First of all, beforehand, before the session, just sitting, and this can take a few minutes, just sitting in meditation, picturing a silver bubble around yourself or like a silver cylinder that goes under your feet up to the top of your head that you're totally concealed in. And the reason why I say silver is because silver is reflective. Like everything, like colors and shapes, everything has a very specific energetic quality. Silver is reflective, so other people's energy coming at you bounces right off, and then your own energy coming out bounces back into you. So that's a great meditation. You can just breathe slowly and just imagine that. I also pray to God constantly because I have had scary, intense experiences with negative entities that were trying to harm me, but act like they're on your side and all of that stuff. So I constantly pray to God that I'm like, I only want to communicate with you. I don't like beings come to me, entities come to me, ancestors, all these things. I will refuse to directly communicate with anyone. I'll listen to what they're saying, but I'm only talking to Hashem, like as if Hashem is my middleman between me and them, right? And I'm like, Ein milvado, like there's
Yeah.
nothing else but God. And
Yeah.
I dive into Hashem all the time. And I'm like, I do not want to be led astray. I don't want to accidentally get involved with anything. I'm not trying to do that. I want to stay whole and pure and connected to you only. And please, God, just keep me on the path that is totally aware and not getting confused. And it's just only you and me, and that is it. And I keep it super pure in that way. And I also pray for my own clients before I get into session with them. I pray to Hashem that he is channeling through me exactly what they need right now for their highest good that will provide them with a profound healing impact that will get them to the next stepping stone of exactly where they need to be right now on their healing journey. Not anything extra, no expectations, like exactly what they need right now for their absolute highest good that will get them to the next step. So those are the different kinds
That's
of things
beautiful.
I do. And also afterwards, I make sure to cleanse my energy. I use Palo Santo. I take Epsom salt baths. I lay down in the grass and just absorb the electromagnetic frequencies of the earth. Breath work, I actively say, I'm giving back all energy that does not belong to me, and I breathe it out and I shake it out and I call back my own energy into my body. It's like, it's a practice. It's like
Yeah.
things you got to
It's like
actively
prep.
do, but if you don't do it, it'll mess you up. And anytime that I was not on top of taking care of my own energy, it would deplete me. I would get a migraine. I would get sick. Like it affects you physically. So
Of course.
it's
What
very
was that
important.
thing? What was that thing that you said? The one that you use for is it sage or something else? What is it?
I like Palo Santo better than Sage. Sage is for not as intense energies. I'm always like, just let me handle the most intense energies. Give me the Palo Santo.
How do you spell that? Uh-huh.
Palosanto. It's a
Okay.
stick of wood. And it smells much better. It smells really good.
Yeah, I don't like the
And
smell of sage so much
I
either.
I, I don't either so much.
As you were sharing your visualization that you do, the protective, it reminded me, you're gonna love this. So there's a very famous Hasidic Rebbe that has a teaching that's exactly that. And I'll share it with you. I'll get it from the class. So I had learned this meditation. It's called the Bitachon bubble. And in
Ah,
Mary, it's like literally what you just said, where you say, Hashem, I want to connect to you and only you and protect me. And every like literally word for word, like what this Rebbe said, you said.
wow.
So I have to share it with you. I learned it from my teacher of cats, who
Mm,
also does special classes on this type of stuff about the spiritual energies and all that kind of stuff. But it's really amazing to see how, like you're plugged into that. And I think everyone can use that, right? Like
everybody.
you're a healer or not, like to just start the day saying, Hashem, just protect me, just like go
Yeah.
into my bubble and just reflect any negative energy. Like I think in general, it's good to be aware and sensitive of what's going on with the things we see and the things we don't see. And some people have the gift that they are intuitively aware, and a lot of us don't, but
Right.
even just to know that things like that exist and there's things that you can do, and it could actually explain a lot of issues that people have and they don't understand like where these things are coming from, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so many things that people carry and act out on and these issues they have, like maybe at least 50% of it is not even yours. It's other people's and it's your parents that are passed down to you, right? Like I even had an experience recently where I learned it's actually when I did ayahuasca one time and it was like the most phenomenal, profound. That's what brought me to like my pure peace and acceptance of my whole big trauma. It was so beautiful and it was so gentle and anyways. But the first thing I experienced on ayahuasca was I was brought into the memory of being in my mother's womb and I could feel her pain and I said, let me take it from her. Like I don't I just want her to feel better and let me take it from her. And it literally created this energetic cord my entire life where like I literally took her pain from her and actually suffered a lot of her stuff that and so she didn't have to. And so recently I had to go through this whole process of like going into meditation and cutting the cord to free myself from that because I started feeling things now that I'm like very aware and have healed so much. I was able to like differentiate when I was like feeling things or feeling certain ways. And I'm like, this is so weird. Like, this is not how I feel about things. And then realizing, like, oh my gosh, that is so her and the way that she functions. I'm like, oh my God, it's the cord. It's what I saw in ayahuasca. And I had
Wow.
to like go through this process of cutting the cord and like knowing she'll be okay and she is big enough to handle her own stuff. She's a big girl too, and of course she can.
Yeah.
And I don't have to take things on for her. And it's I've been like so mentally, emotionally, energetically freed of like a lot of stuff ever since because it wasn't mine the entire time.
Mhm.
And I've experienced that with a lot of family members and stuff like that because that's just my personality. I'm like, I want to take people's pain away, but you can want to take people's pain away, but not to take it on yourself away from them. And by the way, when you do that, it robs the person of the opportunity of healing
Yeah.
because you're holding their energy for them. You have to, and honestly, also when we're holding other people's energies and we're freeing ourselves, I recommend don't give it back to the person. You give it back to Hashem because sometimes they don't have the capacity for it. So you don't
Right.
want to give it to them. It can be too much. So it's like give it to Hashem and let him do what he needs to do with it and daven for the person and trust that he is going to help them and support them. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of energy you want to send.
It's amazing that you had that realization through ayahuasca. I did a past life regression hypnosis thing, which also regressed me back to my mother's womb. And
Wow.
um and I was aware of like things that she was experiencing and things like that. But anyway, not that particular experience, but something else within that hypnosis session was very similar to what you're saying now about the facilitator showed me how I was carrying stuff from other people in my life that had nothing to do with me. And
Yes.
and he walked me through this sort of like mantra of saying, I give this back to you, but now I would do what you said, which is I give back to Hashem. Like I give this back to you. I don't want this. Like, and it's so powerful. Like honestly, as we're talking, I feel like this should be like a dictionary, like a spiritual dictionary,
Totally.
like some sort of like spiritual encyclopedia that just explains all this stuff. Like this is like a whole other language. And I always think about like, oh, if someone heard our conversation like 100 years ago, they would not even understand what we're talking about right now, but like all these things, I feel like this is part of like what Mashiach consciousness is about. The fact that we're aware of these spiritual mechanisms and dynamics that are happening outside of us that we're not even visually able to see but exist. Like there's a
Hmm.
reason why Hashem is giving us access to this wisdom right now at this time of human history, and that this whole awakening that's coming through spiritually with ayahuasca or with psychedelics, it's all creating an opening of the heart center and the neshama coming through, because Hashem wants us to like get on with it, like clear it out already, like do your tikkun. And it's like whatever we were doing before was just not working. And there's a reason why all of these practices and modalities are becoming so popular and so accessible, is because I
Yes.
really feel like Hashem wants us to raise our frequency, like you were saying, like raise our vibration so that we could do the final tikkun. Like, we're all carrying who knows how many lifetimes of stuff we're
Yes,
carrying.
I agree. And I also just want to say to that like there is, because a lot of people are still very skeptical of this regarding energy and how it all works and everything we're talking, literally every facet of what we're talking about beyond ayahuasca, like all of these things, there is so much scientific research and proof behind all of this stuff now. And that is also part of the like Mashiach prophecies is
Yes,
that this stuff will be able to be scientifically proven. And we are here. That's why this is all happening. And
yes.
it's not like we're all crazy and we're all just like doing drugs and going to these places. Like, no, we're literally these medicines, not drugs, medicines are they're shutting down the part of our brain that stops us from accessing these deeper parts of ourselves so that we're able to access it. And then we're able to clear and heal sustainably for real. And when they're used properly in the way that they're meant to be, like medicines, then they work in these beautiful ways, And I always tell people like taking like mushrooms to like party is like drinking Robitussin to get drunk. It's not a drug. It is a medicine. That is using it the wrong way. It is not meant to be used that way. It is like a holy, sacred, beautiful medicine that Hashem grew in the earth for us. And it's been here the whole time,
Mhm. That's
and
what I'm saying. It's like it's been around. It's not like it's new, it's ancient. But like,
yes.
why now? Why now are we accessing it? And why now is it becoming so, available? Is because there's a Hashem wants us to like work on our stuff. We need to reveal like higher healing
Mhm.
globally, really. Um, well, this has been such an incredible conversation. I loved everything we talked about. It was super fascinating to me. Like
Thank you.
so much
Me
fun.
too.
Before we go, was there anything you wanted to tell people about how to reach you, what kind of work you do, anything that you want to share about your work before we wrap it up?
I do. And thank you so much for that opportunity. First of all, if you want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram handle is at manifest.health.official. And my website is bemanifesthealth.com. And I have a very, very exciting free online event coming up on November 19th at 2 p.m. It is a free masterclass called Formula to Freedom or Freedom Formula. Sorry, it's called Freedom Formula. And it is the 3 keys to lasting transformation, where I will be teaching about the 3 keys of what it actually takes, what the steps are that you take to truly sustainably heal and get to this place of freedom within yourself, freedom from survival mode, and freedom from overwhelm, and freedom from anxiety and depression, and all the different things that we deal with and suffer from. And within that masterclass, also there's going to, if you there's going to be the recording available if you're not able to make it live. But if you are able to make it live, there for the people that stay on till the end live, you're going to have an opportunity to win. 3 people have the opportunity to win really, really great opportunities to have one-on-one sessions with me. Um, and I'm also going to be announcing an incredible offering that to be able to provide this healing for people at like a really incredible price. And if you are there the day of and you sign up that day, you're going to get an even better, like insane price. And the reason why it is so affordable is because, like I said, on my own healing journey, when I went through this process and I could not afford to work with anybody, and I understand what it's like to be in that place of suffering and not being able to afford the help that you need. And I have finally figured out a way to offer this type of healing for people at an affordable price, like at a price even then when I couldn't afford anything, I could have afforded this and I could have made this work. And it's incredible. And I'm not announcing what like that whole program is, but it's going to be a membership program starting in December. So please come to the free event, because even the free event, you're going to be gaining so much value. It is worth money to spend on this masterclass that I'm giving away totally for free. And I'm just so excited to spread this healing and to continue bringing Mashiach and getting this information out to as many people as possible, because we need it. We need to bring Mashiach. We need to get all the women on the same page. And I'm just so excited and so grateful. Thank God for this opportunity to be a conduit and a shliach for this healing. Baruch Hashem.
Sure. Amazing. Well, Tamar, thanks so much for being here and wishing you lots of hatzlacha in your work. Should continue to be successful. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so, so much, Rina. It was such an honor to have this conversation.
You're welcome.